Hey, folks, welcome back to the Land Fixer podcast. I am your host, Logan Swanson, where we talk all things land. Today, we're talking about one of my more interesting deals. I'm effectively telling you a story. I'm not sure what I'm going to title this one yet, um, but it's a story about when I bought and sold a little mountain. Um, I don't know, not really a mountain, but a pretty big rocky hill in West Texas in the area in the county of Brewster County. This is a an area that is much loved. It's beloved by all of the native Texans here. It has such an excellent feel of kind of cowboy living. It's flat in many areas and desert and mountainous and cactuses and really rough terrain. So when you think about just the hardy folk of Texas who are able to survive in such a harsh climate, go spend a few days out there, and it'll put things into pretty harsh perspective. So when I started my flipping career, we did a lot of what's called desert squares. So these are 5, 10, 20 acre parcels in the middle of nowhere. We did some in Nevada. We did some in another county called Culberson County. We did a lot of flips in Culberson County. And then we kind of slid over to Brewster County. And Brewster County is enormous in terms of the amount of land there and tiny in terms of population density. There's really, I think, maybe two notable towns in the entire county. One is Alpine and one is Terlingua. And near Terlingua, south of Alpine, there's this huge area called Terlingua Ranch. And these are, I mean, thousands and thousands of desert squares 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 80, 160, just any size acreage you can think. And they were subdivided in the 60s, if I recall. Um, and all they did was cut the land and run some very rough dirt roads. They established an HOA whose sole responsibility is to maintain these roads. And all they really do is just run probably a skid or a dozer over them once every few years. They wash out regularly. Again, really tough terrain. And I think there's really only one paved road that runs through the entire HOA, the entire Terlingua Ranch, Highway 118, if I'm correct. And there's power that runs there. And then it kind of, here and there, it'll run off into the distance for someone who is really dedicated and built a homestead or something. It's gotten more and more popular recently. If you can go on Airbnb, you're going to find a lot of really cool short-term rentals that are like the domes or shipping containers or yurts. A lot of really goofy stuff like that. And the native population is fascinating. The people that actually live there range from kind of folks that needed to get away from something. I believe there's a fair number of those people living there. Then there's just the adventurous spirit types, the folks that love to vacation there, maybe go hunting out there. Then you also have really free spirits, kind of hippie style folks that live out there. And then you have folks that are just, salt of the earth and love that terrain. I've been, since I bought and sold so many parcels, I've had the ability to get to know various folks who live out there. And overall, I really enjoy the area. But I had not been there up until about a year ago. I had bought and sold, I don't know, 40, 50 lots out there. Not a huge amount, but because I know there's a lot of folks who've done more, much more. But it was enough to get pretty familiar with the terrain type, all of that. So, what what kind of brings me to the story today is one of the larger and more profitable flips that I ever did happened out here. We had had a lot of success mailing and flipping the 5, 10, 20 acre parcels, most of the time we were owner financing the lots, buying them very affordably. Um, and we had created a decent note portfolio just on lots outside of Terlingua. But I had spoken to so many buyers through the process that just wanted more acreage. 5 acres wasn't enough, 10 acres wasn't enough, 20 acres wasn't enough. So we went on a very specific mission to go acquire large acreage out there. So we sent a mailer for only lots 80 acres and bigger. I think 80 acres to a square, which is a mile by mile. And we had a lot of responses, got into negotiations with a lot of people, and we found one seller who had was born and raised in Texas. He was an older gentleman now. His father had bought this property and they had spent, I believe, sort of family weekends out there on occasion. They would all, pack their bags and run off and just enjoy snakes and cactuses and things like that. So he was an older gentleman. He lives out of state now. And he said, if I don't sell this now, I'm going to pass away. And he didn't have kids. He had no idea. Just go to this, the county or whatever for unpaid taxes. Um, so we negotiated with him. We got the purchase price at 65,000, I believe 66,000, something like that, and sent it off to title. In the meantime, I did not have $66,000 at the time. We probably could have bought half of it maybe with funds sitting around. So I embarked to go find a JV partner. Luckily, there are a lot of other land investors that do work this area, and one of them I was getting to be friends with. His name was Jason. And I brought it to Jason, showed him the DD. I told him, hey, I'm pretty confident this property will sell for around 200,000, maybe even 250,000 based off of my experience in the area and the comps. Um, and since he'd worked that area and other counties in South Texas, Southwest Texas, he's like, yeah, I could see that. So we signed a very simple JV agreement, 50-50 profit share, and he funded the deal. Uh, it was arduous. There is one title company in this entire county that's doing tons of land transactions, and they are, I believe, two people. I think a mom and a daughter, family operation. And it took us 6 months to close on this property, a simple land transaction for cash. The whole time I'm having to regularly contact the seller and tell them it's not our fault. We're not dragging our heels. It's this title company. And um, a week before we closed, he sent me an email saying, hey, I can't do this anymore. It's just too much stress. It's too much anxiety. I've been waiting for 6 months. And I got him, and it was near Christmas. I remember it very vividly. And I was, my heart sunk because we were like, we need this deal. This is a really big deal for us. So I convinced him to stay on. I did all my magic tricks. And luckily, he stayed on until we closed. And he was very happy to part with this property at the price he got for it. And then came the marketing efforts. We immediately got it on market. We were probably actually already marketing it a fair bit, if I had to remember correctly. And we ordered the drone footage. We discussed getting a survey preemptively because the grid lines on the maps out there can be pretty far off. And um, I think within 3 months we had a buyer. He got it under contract for 190,000 or 185,000, something like that, uh, with 3 weeks to close. And he dragged his heels, kind of lost communication with him near closing, and then sure enough, he backed out. Ah, shucks, he went on his way. Got back to marketing all over the place, all the websites I could get it on, Facebook Marketplace, anything I could think of, and found another buyer. This time a little less. I think it was 180,000, but still not a bad lick. And same situation. He kind of dragged his heels for 4 weeks, saying he was getting the funding or he had to sell this property in order to get the money. Didn't happen. Got to the finish line. He said, "Hey, I can't do it." And at this point, I think we were like nine, I mean, maybe even 10, 11 months into our JV deal with Jason after we bought the property, and it was set to expire at a year. So Jason was going to take it back, and all of my efforts would have been lost. Well, maybe not. He probably would have extended this for us. He's a good guy, but the potential was there. And I had a call with him, and he said, I think you need to redouble your marketing efforts. Maybe let's go get some fresh footage. The drone footage we got from this other guy really didn't exhibit the property correctly. Let's get the survey done. And I think we should post signs, for sale signs out there. And it was at a time in my life where I could really have used a bit of me time. So he had a couple other properties he needed drone footage of. He said he would, throw me some shekels if I went and did that for him. So I grabbed a drone and headed out from Dallas Fort Worth on, I think it was a 16-hour drive, something like that, all the way up to West Texas. And I have a map here. I'll show you. Brewster County's right here on the map. It's inverted for you. And I'm all the way up here in Dallas. So we took this long road trip, and or just myself, I took this long road trip, 16 hours, and I stopped at these, way out in the sticks properties that Jason was selling, and I took drone footage. I walked an abandoned cabin that was full of all sorts of weird stuff, and overall, it was a really unique experience. I'd never really done something like that, where, or at least not since college, taken a long road trip and just had a bunch of time with myself. So I get to Alpine that first night, and I stay in a hotel. It's really crazy landscape. The I was really excited to see the stars, but it was storming, and I think I kind of got a trade off because that West Texas night sky, when it's all lit up with thunder and heavy rain, is really something to behold. It was really unique and really pretty. So I settled in for the night, and next morning, bright and early, I ran, and of course, I bought a gun. I went and bought a rifle so that I could go shooting out there since I was going to be in the middle of nowhere. Grabbed my drone, and I stopped and bought a few for sale signs that I could draw on with a big marker and stab them in the ground. As I was headed out to the property, it seemed like I was continually getting some sort of unfortunate news up until I lost cell service. So it was like bad news, bad news, bad news. No cell service. Get to the property, and you have to go on these dirt roads that are very poorly maintained out there. And I almost got stuck in probably a foot of mud. I don't know. I just didn't see it. Everything seemed dry and pretty hard, and everything was going fine until I was spinning my wheels and going sideways in this mud. And I did get stuck, but I managed to rock and probably almost burned up my engine trying to get out of there. But I did manage to get unstuck, continued down the road, and I found the property. And it was a very pretty property, is a very pretty property. Um, but I knew if I wanted to get the best footage, I had to climb it. And again, it's not a mountain, it's not crazy steep, but it is really rough terrain. It's very gravelly. There's cacti everywhere, loose rock underfoot, and there's a bunch of snakes out there. So I was sure I was going to get bit by a snake or something. And I was not very wise. I only brought one big bottle of water. I thought that would be plenty, but this was the middle of summer in Texas, in West Texas, in the desert. And so pretty dumb in retrospect, but I threw my gun on my shoulder. I had my drone on my shoulder. I had my bottle of water, and I started ascending. And it was pretty steep and treacherous. When I got to the top, I was already halfway through my water, out of breath, pouring sweat, and I got cell service again. And the cell service, right when I got it, I was supposed to be meeting a surveyor out there. He called, said he was done with the survey, and I was like, "How are you done? I'm here." And found out he had surveyed the wrong property, which we desperately needed this property surveyed. Oh, it was a whole mess. But anyways, I kept I kept you know persevering, as I tell my son, persevere through the situation. So I got the drone up. I took a ton of drone footage, had some action shots going up off of the cliff face, and got everything I thought would be excellent marketing material. And when it was time for me to descend, I looked at the path I took up, and I was like, "That is treacherous." It would have been easier to ascend than to descend with my hands full of a gun and a drone and all this other stuff. So I decided to take the long way down, but it has a gradual slope on the back of the property, and so I took that, I don't know, half-mile hike down. It was still pretty steep, still jumping from rock to rock and dodging cacti, afraid I'm going to get bit by a snake the whole time. And I get to the bottom only to encounter a fence. The neighbor had fenced off their property and it ran all the way back up the side of the mountain. So it was impassable. And it was pretty stout razor wire. I didn't see any way that I'd be able to climb through it or something like that. Plus, you don't really want to climb through it in case they are very gun happy. And this is an area of concern. So I had to grit my teeth, look at my empty water bottle, and head back up the mountain only to descend the way that I really didn't want to descend. And it was miserable. It was slow. I was gritting my teeth the whole time. It was a lot of sliding at cactuses, and I managed to do it without injuring myself. But by the time I got to the bottom, man, I was whooped. I'd been out there for probably 2.5, 3 hours. It was, I don't know, 105, 106 degrees out. I was out of water. My mouth was dry, pouring sweat, banged up from all the rocks. And when I finally get back to my car, I'm looking around and I'm supposed to stab this for sale sign on the property, and there is nobody around. I was like, this is the dumbest thing. And I almost didn't do it. I was like, no one's ever going to see this sign. What are the chances of it? It's ludicrous. Um, there's no dirt either. Like, it's all rock. I didn't even know how I was going to stab this wooden stake into the ground to staple the sign to it. But again, what would I tell my son? You need to persevere. Do what you said you were going to do. So I did. I spent another 20 minutes trying to find a place soft enough that I could, stab the sign and stapled it up. Threw all my stuff back in the car, headed out. I dropped a couple more for sale signs off of the, kind of directing people back to the property, and I was out of there. Um, so I get back to Dallas, and the next day I get a call from a neighbor, and I couldn't believe it. I listened to the voicemail first, and he's like, "Hi, I saw your sign on the property, and I've always kind of wanted to buy this property. I'd love to make you an offer. Just give me a call back." And I couldn't believe it. Super excited. Called him back, and he's like, "So what are you asking for?" And I said, "Well, we're selling it at $199,000 right now." And he said, "Oh, that property's worth about $50,000. That's the most I would pay for it, and that's more than I paid for my property, which is the equal size." And I was pretty crestfallen, honestly. Again, it just seemed like I would work hard and I'd keep getting kicked in the gut. So I said, no, thank you. I can't lose money. Jason would kill me. So I go back, posting all the new marketing content, trying to get it out again, doing whatever. I think I switched it from one broker to another, just doing all the little games I knew how to do. And the next day, I get a call from another neighbor. Again, I almost didn't put this sign in the ground. And he leaves a voicemail. Sounds like a very nice gentleman. But I had this fear that I had to overcome. That was, I was going to call him and he was going to say it's worth $45,000. That's what he would offer for it. And I had a lot of kicks in the gut at the time. So it was kind of tough. I picked up the phone, gave him a call back, and chatted with him for a few minutes. And he says the same thing. He has the property across the way. He's always kind of looked at this property and its unique terrain, and he's always wanted to buy it, but he could never get in touch with the owner. And he asked me, he wants to buy it cash. He says, "How much are you offering it for?" And it kind of was this moment of self doubt where I almost lowballed him, because we had played around with the pricing a lot. I had brought it all the way down to 150 at one point, down to 120 at one point, but I had, with the new footage, I pushed it back up to 199 and just prayed. Um, so I kind of paused, took a deep breath, and as matter of factly as possible, I said, "This is going to sell for $199,000." And he paused for, the usual deal. It was probably like 5 seconds, but it felt like, 10 minutes for me. And he said, "Okay, can you send me the contract today for 199,000? I have cash. We can close whenever you want." And it was, you know, such a powerful moment for me. I knew this business worked in little deals. I had done a lot of little deals. I'd made 10,000 here, 20,000, excuse me, 20,000 there. I'd never made a big lick, even a big lick with a partner getting their money, right? Um, so we wrapped it up. I sent him the contract. He signed it right away. It was still kind of dodgy at the end because the title company takes so long. And um, This was a point in my business where we were property heavy and cash poor. And I was at the height of my overhead. I had much more employees and costs at the time. And we were, I mean, broke. When I had hit a period where I was like, man, if this deal doesn't close and hit my account soon, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to have to start telling our employees, sorry, we can't pay you right now. Um, we're going to have to postpone. It's going to be a crumbling nightmare. And since this closing kept getting pushed and delayed and pushed and all sorts of madness, I had to, you know, be as patient as possible, but the patience wasn't there. And it got to a point where it was literally the day of everyone's expecting money. All of the subscription softwares, all the employees, all of the whoever we owed money to, it was due. And I checked my accounts, it wasn't there. And I just got in my car and I had to drive a little bit and kind of decompress and tell myself it's all going to be okay. But that was the first time that the full weight of the situation sunk in, and I felt pretty helpless. And um, by the time I finished my drive, I was kind of turning it over to my higher power, saying, "Hey, I can't do this. You're gonna have to do it for me." And I checked one last time, and sure enough, the wire hit the account right at the last minute, and we ran inside and paid everybody. Um, it was a really cool moment for me. I learned in this one flip many life lessons about never giving up, persevering through the hard moments, having faith, having courage, uh, taking a little adventure. I think this is something that I need to do more consistently in my life is find a reason to go take a little adventure. Make a reason if you need to. Um, and when I find myself in a situation in the future, and it has already happened, where I feel like I just got done climbing a mountain and I'm out of water, and I feel like I should cheat and not pound that sign in the ground because of all the excuses at hand, I'll be reminded of the fact that it's usually in those moments where the results are found. So, for anyone listening, if you're at that point, whatever it is, in your business, in your family situation, in whatever, you can glean a little bit from this story, I hope, and I hope you go find a moment like that where you can make the right decision and see how it impacts your life in a major way. Well, I droned on that one longer than I thought. But, folks, thank you for listening. You can reach out to me if you want, landfixer@gmail.com. Check out if you want to buy land at wholesale prices, primelandexchange.com. If you need help with marketing, you want to post your properties on Prime Land Exchange, reach out. If you need deal funding, check out landpartnerfunding.com. And if you just want to have a chat with me, I'd love to chat with you. Send me a message. You can find me on Facebook, all over the place. But the landfixer@gmail.com is the quickest way to get a hold of me. Thanks. Love y'all. Peace.